Star Wars has given us some of the very best of villains in our culture. Darth Vader is a juggernaut that strikes a chord of rebellion against fatherhood gone wrong. Emperor Palpatine is the Snake, a serpentine manipulator who resembles the Grim Reaper. Both of these villains have something that the average human being, like you and me, do not have: magic or the Force. If we do have the Force, we certainly cannot use it like they do. One Star Wars villain is every bit as dangerous and intimidating as Vader or Palpatine, and he doesn't need the Force, superpowers, or any kind of plot magic to be powerful and feared. I'm not talking about Tarkin, who is so arrogant that he fails to see the fatal flaws with the Death Star. I'm talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn. I have to admit that I am a Thrawn fanatic. I'm going to tell you why Thrawn is actually the most fascinating Star Wars villain. There are many other videos explaining who Grand Admiral Thrawn is, but I will give those who don't know a brief introduction. Thrawn is a blue-skinned, red-eyed Chiss, a mysterious species from the unknown regions of the galaxy. He comes into the service of the Empire by impressing an Imperial captain. Since the Emperor needs information about the unknown regions, he fast-tracks Thrawn's career into the Imperial Navy in exchange, but the Imperial Navy does not view aliens favorably. In spite of all this, Thrawn uses his strategic and tactical prowess to rapidly rise through the ranks, and after many impressive victories is promoted to Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy, one of only a handful of other Grand Admirals. Thrawn studies his enemies by learning everything he possibly can about them, but especially their art. Most of the time, by studying an enemy's art and culture, he is able to learn their inherent nature and predict what they will do. Now, why is this so fascinating? Well, there are two reasons. The first reason is what I like to call the Batman effect. Unlike other DC comic heroes, Batman has no superpowers. Batman relies on his wit to succeed. The other DC heroes, by comparison, seem like untalented brutes. This is one reason why people love to see a Batman versus Superman fight. We want to root for Batman because he has no special advantages other than intelligence. He's just a man, like you and me. The same principle applies to Iron Man or Boba Fett. Interesting how mere mortals are the most popular superheroes or villains. Thrawn is the same way. We often find ourselves rooting for Thrawn, even though he is a villain, because he doesn't have any special abilities such as the Force. And although he is an alien, he's a Chiss, we can still appreciate his talents, because he doesn't use any abilities that you or I couldn't use to achieve our own goals. The other reason that Thrawn is so fascinating is that he fills the role of a specific cultural archetype. I'll explain what I mean by that. Star Wars has many characters that fill certain cultural archetypes, and that's part of its appeal. Thrawn is the cultural archetype of the Grand Strategist. If you would study history and literature, which you should since it's really interesting, you will see examples of the Grand Strategist coming up over and over again. Sometimes fictional, but usually very real. Unfortunately, war and conflict is part of our reality. And in most of these conflicts, we remember leaders who have surprised us with their strategic genius the most. Examples of this are Erwin Rommel, George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, Hannibal of Carthage, Alexander the Great, Leonidas, the Spartan king, and going all the way back to Sun Tzu in China, who wrote The Art of War. These are only a few examples of many grand strategists, and many of them were not even military commanders. These are people who could overcome great odds and outthink their opponents. Grand Admiral Thrawn fills this archetype perfectly. Thrawn is made even more fascinating because his motivations are mysterious. He is not a bad guy for the sake of just being evil. Now, he is cold and ruthless, but even when he seems to be at his moral worst, he's doing things for a logical reason. He doesn't act out of anger, cruelty, or all that much arrogance. There is much speculation about what Thrawn's motivations really are. Most believe that he's trying to prepare the galaxy, and by proxy his home, the Chiss Ascendancy, for some greater threat, a threat so terrible that only a vast Imperial Navy would be able to deal with it. Whatever Thrawn's long-term goals, whether they are morally good or bad, one thing is for sure: Thrawn is what philosophers in academia call a realist. And because Thrawn is a realist, he would likely never outright join the rebellion. The rebels are idealists. These are two opposite ways of viewing the world. Idealists see the world through rose-colored glasses and believe that the highest ideals of morality, honor, and justice should be maintained at all times, even if it means sacrificing material gains or even lives. Idealists, at their most militaristic, are crusaders. Realists believe the world is not such a rosy place, and that it's not so black and white. They believe that people are mostly in it for themselves in the end. Ideals of morality mean nothing if you cannot protect them through any means necessary. Realists believe that the ends justify the means, no matter how cruel and ruthless they may seem. These acts are not cruel for the sake of being cruel. More than that, normally we do not aspire to be anything like a villain. Thrawn, on the other hand, is something that we could actually aspire to. We are still waiting to see if his goals morally justify his decision to join the Empire. But if they do, perhaps we can be morally secure in any aspirations we may have to be like Thrawn. There are many Star Wars fans who are idealists. Idealists have the hardest time choking down the strategy and tactics of realism and finding a way to implement them in life. At a certain point, though, the idealist becomes morally certain of what it is they're supposed to do. And when that happens, they could benefit greatly from using the strategy and tactics of realism and unleash their own inner Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thanks for watching, Space Friends! I haven't pushed Patreon much, but if you like this content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon, linked in the description below. Presently, I'm only able to publish about 5 to 4 videos a month. If I reach the current Patreon goals, I'll be able to publish 6 to 8 videos a month, or put more time into longer and more in-depth videos. Of course, I really appreciate your comments, likes, and subscriptions very much. Keep evolving, Space Friends, and be well.